All right, let's get started. All right, welcome everybody to Scaling Scrum and some specialty skills. So I'm gonna kind of go over some of the things that we've done in the past, some of the things I've seen. Some of the stuff is based off a Scrum at Scale model, which I'll kind of cover. My name's Fred Mastropasqua. I'm a certified Scrum trainer, certified Scrum at Scale trainer, a couple other certifications. My background is in application development, enterprise development, network infrastructure, and been involved in Scrum for since 2009, 2010, depending on what my memory is a little foggy there, somewhere in there, 12 years, somewhere around that. Upcoming, just so that everyone's aware of some propaganda slides, we do have some classes upcoming: Scrum Master, the Safe Agilist, and the Agile Requirements one is one I'd love to see Phil. That's an amazing class. It's advanced product owner. How do you do system thinking? How do you do requirements across multiple systems? And when you're looking at big, complicated products or systems within an organization. So definitely class. I'd love to get people in and see that coming up. We are hiring for mean stack developers and full stack developers. Hit us up at careers@clearlyagile.com if you or someone you know is interested in that. All right, so first poll to you guys is, what scaling framework are you currently using, if any? I guess I should have put none as an option. But what scaling framework are you currently using or maybe most familiar with? So that'll be the first poll that goes out. So Ashley, you can launch that. And so you should get a pop-up in the Zoom window that kind of tells you, gives you those options. So what scaling framework are you currently using? I should have, or maybe unknown. You can either, if you're not sure, you can put other, or if you're not using any. All right, so yeah, so a lot of people are using Safe. So hopefully some of you came to last month's webinar. Rob Shaw went over Safe, a lot of the Safe stuff. Oh yeah, Enterprise Kanban or Kanban is good. All right. All right, nicely done. So we got Safe at the top, and then a portfolio or enterprise Kanban board, which is a great supplement to a scaling framework, also came in second place. So why do we need scaling? I won't spend a lot of time here, but the original Scrum guide really focuses on one team. It makes that assumption of one team. Scrum, as originally outlined in the Scrum guide, is a framework for developing, delivering, and sustaining complex products by a single team. Right. A lot of times in class, we get questions, well, what do you do with multiple teams and how do you scale that up? And the product owner's responsibilities alter and change when you start scaling things up. So if you're just going off the Scrum guide, it doesn't really help guide you in scaling up Scrum. And the goal is to go from a single team to many teams or teams of teams. And that's the purpose of a scaling framework, is to kind of scale that up and what are the best practices for that. There are a lot of benefits to scaling Scrum. Forbes did a whole study in 2018 on the benefits of organizational agility, agility versus agile, and at the organizational level versus just the and versus the mindset too, and approach and culture changes. So if you're interested, take a look at that study that Forbes did in 2018. So Scrum at Scale is the one I'm focusing on. Scrum at Scale is a framework within which networks of Scrum teams operating consistently with the Scrum guide, right? So it's teams working based off of the Scrum guide, working collectively together to solve complex problems or adaptive problems. Why do I prefer Scrum at Scale over some of the other frameworks? Scrum at Scale is focused on doing good Scrum. So it's not prescriptive. It's kind of vague in some areas, just like the Scrum guide is. So you can do what you need. Scrum at Scale separates the accountability of the what and the how. So, right. So just like we separate the PO accountabilities from the Scrum Master accountabilities, the framework is built with that in mind as well, separating those accountabilities out. There's leadership involvement with Scrum at Scale. There's a clear escalation path. It supports an agile enterprise or an agile practice. Targets organizational culture, and it was created by the creator of Scrum, right? What more do you need? The guy that created Scrum that we're all trying to use, is the one that created Scrum at Scale. And so why not use that? So next poll is, how familiar are you with Scrum at Scale? That way, if everyone's super familiar with it, I will, cut through some of those items. So poll is, I'm certified in it. Yes, I'm very familiar, somewhat familiar, vaguely familiar. I've heard of it, but not familiar, or I've never heard of it. So Ashley, you can send that out. All right, so just poll real quick. How familiar are you with Scrum at scale? All right, so we got one certified person. That was not me. Somewhat vaguely, never heard of, oh, have heard of it, but not familiar at all. Okay, great. So this will be perfect for you guys. And a lot of it's gonna be me drawing. So, all right, Scrum at scale framework. So before I kind of get into the drawing aspect of it, something to note, right? Scrum at scale again separates the Scrum Master stuff, work, accountabilities from the product owner. They call it cycles, the Scrum Master cycle and the product owner cycle. So the Scrum Master side of the framework focuses on the delivery, focuses on the cross coordination of teams, impediment removal, and continuous improvements, and team process, which is basically Scrum, metrics, transparency, and then product release and feedback, or product and release feedback. And then any issues escalate up to something called an executive action team, which we'll talk about. All right, the product owner side focuses on the vision, the backlog prioritization, refinements, release planning, also product and release feedback. So there's some overlaps with these three, right? Metrics and the team process. And then they escalate up to something called an executive meta, the Scrum. So you have kind of separation of accountabilities down the middle. Both sides share the team process, which is Scrum. They share metrics and they share product and release feedback. And then they kind of separate from there. The Scrum Master side is another way of looking at it. Scrum Masters focus on best practices, solving problems and removing impediments, deliver early and often. And there's kind of a structure here down here at the bottom. I'm going to draw that out for you. The product owners maintain clear and consistent product vision, optimize the business value, and respond to market change. The structure is a little bit different on the product owner side, but again, I'm going to kind of draw that for you. So some examples, if you were scaling Scrum up. So let's switch over here. So here I have a Scrum team, right? Or one single Scrum team, which we're all familiar with. I have a product owner, which is in red. The Scrum Master is in blue. And then our cross-functional developers are the three little green people there, right at the bottom. So let's say we have one scenario is we have this Scrum team. And let's say they work with a second Scrum team and they work with a third Scrum team. And why did my drawings just have to disappear there? Hold on. Try to figure out that's a is that a copy issue? Let's do that again. That's very strange. All right, there we go. Much better. All right, so let's say they work, we have two teams, and let's make it three teams, and three teams work together, and they're responsible for delivering a single product. Let's say we have three Scrum teams, they're responsible for delivering a single product. And let's say over here we have two more Scrum teams, and they're focused on delivering a different product, right? Different product together. But so these three work on one product, those two work on a different product or project, however you want, whatever term you want to use, but product for the Agile mindset. And so what would happen is every day, these three teams would each have their own daily Scrum. We're going to focus on the Scrum Master side first, but they'd each have their daily Scrum at say 7:30 a.m. It's kind of early, but 7:30 a.m. everybody meets, right? The teams meet, they do their daily, which we're familiar with. They sync up with each other. And then what happens, let's say at 8 a.m. what they do is they send a representative to a scale daily Scrum. So these three teams, in essence, right here, make up a Scrum of Scrums. So Scrum of Scrums term is used differently depending on which version of Scrum of Scrums you're looking at. Scrum of Scrum sometimes is referred to as the activity of Scrum Masters getting together and syncing up with each other. And Scrum at scale terminology, Scrum of Scrums is the actual makeup of teams that work together. So the Scrum of Scrums is these three teams together. That's the Scrum of Scrums. But they send a representative to a scale daily Scrum to meet every single day. Could be the Scrum Master, could be a team member, doesn't have to be the Scrum Master. Sometimes it might be the Scrum Master, or could be, it's somebody that represents that team. All right, it might be the Scrum Master and a developer that might come to that. And so every single day they meet together to coordinate any issues or impediments that the teams couldn't solve themselves. and to at least let the other teams know what's going on. Like, hey, we're working on where we just, we're gonna have to reset the database server. It's gonna affect you guys, just so you're aware of it. Right? They're syncing up with themselves. At the Scale Daily Scrum, there is somebody who is the Scrum of Scrums Scrum Master. Right? Scrum of Scrum Scrum Master. They're responsible for kind of facilitating this event, and they're keeping a list of any impediments that they can't solve or that need to be resolved for the team, for across the teams. They meet every single day. This Scrum of Scrum Scale Daily event meets every single day at 8 a.m. and a team representative again from all teams gets together. Over here at the same time, you have another Scale Daily Scrum of these folks over here joining. A team representative comes here and team representative comes there. And here you also have a Scrum of Scrums Scrum Master keeping a list of organizational or impediment issues. Right. And you have a team representative that attends this every single day. All right. So that's a Scale Daily Scrum. And the makeup of these two teams is the Scrum of Scrums. Like, this is your Scrum of Scrums. It's those two teams together make that Scrum of Scrums. Now, let's say that they can't resolve their impediments. And let's say, to make it more complicated, these two things they're working on roll up to even a bigger product. This could be, let's say this is a component, right? This is a component A, and they're working on component B, and maybe they roll up to the same product ultimately. So what you would then have is a formation where you would say these three teams and these two teams together form a Scrum of Scrums, right? It goes up a little bit higher there. And so every single day, let's say at 8, for 15 minutes, this daily Scrum was 10:30 to 7:45. And then we give maybe a 15-minute break, or just to make it easy, you won't even do a break. So we'll say this daily Scrum is at Scale Daily Scrum is at 7:45 to 8 a.m. And then at 8:15 or 8 a.m., sorry, to 8:15, you might have a scaled Scrum of Scrums event. So what that would mean is you have some type of scaled daily Scrum, and you have a Scrum of Scrum Scrum Master here with their impediment list, and then a team representative from this Scrum of Scrums ultimately would come to here, and team representative here would also attend and come here, and they would sync up with each other. It's similar to a daily Scrum. It's like, this is what our team is working on that might affect you. This is what our team is doing that, might benefit you, or just to be aware of. And then any issues they can't solve, they're going to escalate it up the chain. So the team can't solve the impediment, and if down at this level, this little these Scrum Masters have their own impediment list or transformation things they think that will help improve the team. They can't solve it, they escalate it up. It goes up to the next level. So the Scrum Masters in this case almost have like a kind of like a product backlog, but it's not a product backlog. We call it an agile transformation or impediment backlog. And they're keeping track of things that they think will help improve. And it might be things that might take a long time, like we need DevOps training. That would help improve the process, but we're not going to get that for a long while. Anything the Scrum Master can't handle, they're going to escalate. They're going to take it up to the next level, and those impediments then show up on this list. Then so they meet at 8 to 8:15, and then at 8:15 to 8:30, this Scrum of Scrums Master is going to escalate up to something called the Executive Action Team. Right, the Executive Action Team, the idea behind this is it's a group of cross-functional C-suite executives, ideally. And if you're doing company-wide organizational transformation, it'd be a group of cross-functional C-suite people that can change company policy, financial, HR, CTO, CIO, CEO, right? Anyone that can change company policy would sit in this team. A lot of companies will do this at the department level. So if you're doing it at the department level, then you're having department heads, right? Or at least who can change policy within this department possibly. And maybe that escalates past up into the executive level. But the idea behind the Executive Action Team is it's the top level of the chain of the escalation path. Right, the Scrum Masters here can't solve it. They're going to escalate it up, right? And they're going to attend and bring it to the Executive Action Team, And the executive action team is going to have a impediment list of things they're trying to solve within the company. Right. So kind of give you some definitions around that. So Scrum of Scrums, right, is the makeup of teams. So in this drawing here, you have 5 teams, right? 5 Scrum teams here, 4 or 5, and they make up a Scrum of Scrums. And they're attending a scale daily Scrum every single day to sync up with each other. Right. And then you could have groups of 5. All right. So 5 teams here, 5 teams there, 5 teams here, 5 teams here, 5 teams there. Each of those is Scrum of Scrums. They every single day they do a daily Scrum with themselves, with their own teams, and then they bring up to the scale daily Scrum to their Scrum of Scrums meeting or event where they sync up with each other across teams. And then a representative from each of those Scrum of Scrums attends a Scrum of Scrums. Right? You can do something like that. And then this Scrum of Scrums would escalate up to the executive action team. So the executive action team is, again, C-suite, people that can make policy changes, that can eat what we call eat the impediments, right? They remove impediments that are not handled at the team level due to scope, budget, or political power. They look at measurements to improve quality of Scrum. They execute any transformation strategies or agile transformation strategies or delegate it to the agile practice, which we'll talk about. And they observe metrics and dashboards to ways to improve the process. So the executive action team is focused on the how we're getting things done, right? To remove impediments and clear the way to make the process better, right? Ultimately better. So that's the kind of the Scrum Master side. It's teams, the formation of multiple teams is the Scrum of Scrums and Scrum at Scale. So 3 teams, if they work on one thing and they need to sync with each other, they form a Scrum of Scrums. If these 2 teams sync with each other to deliver a working product or a piece of a working product, they form a Scrum of Scrums. If these 2 Scrum of Scrums form together to form a working product ultimately together, then they're going to form a Scrum of Scrums. Now, you don't have to go that complicated. If I have a one-off team like over here, for example, let's say I have this team is all by themselves and they're not delivering anything related to the other teams and they're all by themselves, then they may just go straight to any impediments they can't resolve to the executive action team. Or I'd probably have them join and deliver any issues they have to the Scrum of Scrums. I'd probably have them join here, right? At least so they're aware of what the other teams are doing. But the idea is that you could have you're supposed to have up to 5 teams in a Scrum of Scrums. You typically don't want to go more than that. And then another set of 5 teams, another set of 5 teams. Now, the executive action team has the responsibility of improving agile practices across the organization. So how do they do that? They would either do it themselves if they're small enough, or if they're bigger, they might create something called an agile practice. So an agile practice would be an offshoot that reports into the executive action team. And the agile practice is a cross-functional team of agile coaches, trainers, anyone that can help deliver organizational transformation change, or at least come up with coaching responsibilities. So here's kind of a quick definition. Cross-functional Scrum team who owns the coaching competencies. Right, they're accountable for quality of Scrum. They deliver transformation vision, the transformation vision of the executive action team through execution. So their jobs execute the vision for the transformation. Right, they're not a PMO. They're not there to take project status and report on project status. They're there to simply improve the process. Right, so they might facilitate the creation of the product owner organization, the Scrum Master organization. They're going to provide skill training. They're going to provide try to do coaching or mentoring for other Scrum Masters. Ideally, all the Scrum Masters would report into the agile practice. Right, they report into the agile practice. So you have this cross-functional set of coaches and trainers. You guys actually have one. Oh no, it's some of the clients we work with actually have one of these in place. And now, so that's the Scrum Master side. Scrum Masters focus on how do we deliver what the product owners are looking for, right? And what they're looking for. So then on the product owner side, it's a little bit different. On the product owner side, product owners get together every single, at least once a sprint. So on the blue side, we have the Scrum Master side. They get together every single day. They sync up with each other. So if I go look at the schedule here, I meant to mention this earlier. 7:30 the teams meet. 7:45 you have your scale daily scrum. 8 a.m. you have your scale daily scrum, and then that gets escalated to the executive action team at 8:15. So by 8:30, the executive action team knows all the issues and impediments across the organization, at least with this specific structure. All right now, on the product owner side, product owners are supposed to get together once a sprint. So they get together in something called a meta scrum, and they form a meta scrum. And what this is the product owner here attends, and the product owner here attends, and the product owner here attends. So unlike the scrum of scrums, it's just a team representative. It doesn't have to be the scrum master. For the meta scrum, it is all three product owners. And all three product owners, one of them either also is a chief product owner, or you could have a dedicated person in this, what we call a chief product owner role here. And so, and I'll kind of cover that in a second here. This over here, you have a meta scrum here as well. And you have this product owner attending and this product owner attending. The idea is that every single, at least once a sprint, they're going to sync up their backlogs with each other. And one of these product owners may play the role of the chief product owner, or it could be a dedicated person. Then I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So the Scrum, at the team level, it's a little bit different than the Scrum guide. Scrum guide really focuses on product owner does everything because it's a single team. Once you start scaling up, some of those duties kind of get split a little bit. The responsibilities change a little bit. So when you scale up, it might make more sense. You have let's say an XBA who becomes a product owner at the team level. So at the team level, the product owner is setting the team priorities. They're a servant leader. They're working with the team and the customers. They're looking at stories and epics. They're focused on the what, right? And they're just the stable interface to the team of what's coming down the path. Then you get up to the meta scrum and the chief product owner, right? So this person here, their responsibility is setting the vision for the product. They are aligning the product backlogs based on epics and features. They're working closely with the scrums master. They're monitoring feedback. They're leading the meta scrum. So this chief product owner is working closely with this scrums master over here. And they're working with these product owners to figure out, okay, here's our epics and features. Who's going to get what? Let's sync up with each other. And those get funneled down to the team product backlogs, right? The product backlogs of those actual teams, or to those product owners. So again, over here, you have a higher level product backlog at the chief level. And then you're going to break those down and send them down, lower items down to the team. So here you might have something like credit card payment might be one. And then this team's going to do Visa, MasterCard. That team's going to do American Express. That team might do Discover. Or you might break it all down. It all goes to this team, possibly. However you decide to break that up. Then these two chief product owners get together in something called a meta scrum, right? If both sides here were syncing up with each other, or had ultimately working on the same product, or even if not, just to sync up with each other, understand where the organization is going, you then have another meta scrum with a chief product owner who has even a higher level backlog. And this product owner is attending here at least once a sprint. And this product owner is attending at least once a sprint. This drawing is going to start looking crazy. And so you have something called a chief product owner, and they're responsible for setting priorities for multiple team groups. They focus on refinement at a higher level, some planning. They're looking at value streams. They're looking at features. They're looking at maybe cross coordination and alignment, and they're working with their counterpart on the scrum master, right? So they're working closely with this person over here, scrum master, right? And these two kind of working closely together. And so this is an example of what that might look like. Is you have, let me go back to right, this was your product owners reporting into with a chief product owner every single sprint. They sync up with each other. If you had 5 teams, right, that's what that would look like. And then your chief product owners are attending a meta scrum with a chief product owner, and they're syncing up at least once a sprint. Then the next escalation path from that is it goes up to the executive meta scrum. All roads lead to the executive meta scrum and the executive action team. So the chief product owner attends the executive meta scrum, and at this level, they have a I think someone said they use portfolio Kanban boards. Here's where you would have your portfolio Kanban board or ultimate product backlog at a higher level, or maybe a Kanban board. And this is what the executives are using to determine, where we at, where we're going to work on. And so the vision comes ultimately from up here, the direction of the organization, and then it goes from this Kanban board or portfolio backlog to the chief product owner. Then from the chief product owner, and then the chief product owner is going to coordinate with these two chief product owners to figure out who gets what teams have bandwidth, right? Let's assign it to the right team groups. And then it goes to the chief product owner, and then they work with their product owners to sync up and figure out which teams are gonna get some of this work. Right, so it kind of looks something like this, where your executive meta scrum, it's a product owner teams, right? We enable product owners you can scale infinitely using this model, getting key stakeholders up at the top level to weigh in on what's needed. And who do you need on the executive meta scrum? They own their organizational vision, so you're going to want some type of SVP or a CEO, some type of maybe a CFO, financial executive, right? Anyone that's needed to make, again, company-wide decisions for the organization. They're going to lead the initiatives, the value streams. Now, it's a little different if you're an IT and your business unit is outside. Like, this is where you may be crossing the gap from, IT is more on the blue side and the business unit is on the red side, right? So it still plays along the lines of IT's focus on how do we deliver and the business focus on what we deliver. So you would set up your IT structure similar to what I have here, and then you would set up your business structure with the meta scrum similar to this setup as well. This is the model that Saab uses. So you're familiar with Saab, they build military planes, and they have 2,000 people coordinate within an hour and a half of how do they get all the information up to the executive action team. So at 7:30, they're doing a daily scrum. At 7:45, they're doing a scale daily scrum of scrums. 8 o'clock, they're doing a scale daily scrum of scrums. 8:15, they're doing a scale daily scrum of scrums. And at 8:30, they're reporting into the executive action team all the roll-ups across all the teams of 2,000 people in an hour and a half. And they actually build this military craft using an agile method. They deliver a new version of the plane every 6 months that can actually be tested and used, ready for deployment and production. It's pretty amazing if you look into that case study. Here's some examples. So this is an example of 125 teams, 625 people. So again, we typically want to stick with no more than 5 teams into a scrum of scrums. So here you have 5 teams, right? And you have each of these 5 form a scrum of scrums. And then the grouping of 5 scrum of scrums forms a scrum of scrums, right? And then they report straight into the executive action team. So they don't have to go to another level like I had in the drawing. Right here, I have scrum of scrums. You could have more levels in between the executive action team and the groups, but you don't have to. So next example, they have escalation path 1, scrum of scrums, escalation path 2, scrum of scrums, and then escalation path 3 straight to the executive action team. That's the same for all their units, right? So your scale daily, let's say your daily scrum was at 8 a.m. down at the team level, 8:15 at the scrum of scrums, 8:30 at the scrum of scrums, and at 8:45, so within an hour, you could know all the issues and impediments across all 125 teams. The executive meta scrum is the same structure. They just don't meet every single day. They meet typically at least once a sprint. So let's go. Here's an example of a case study that was done. This is complicated. Looks complicated at first, but once you break it down, you can kind of see what it's like. It's 20,000 employees across 6 countries, 100 agile teams. And so they have over here, you'll see they have this grouping of 4 teams forms. They have a meta scrum and a scrum of scrums. They roll up to the scrum of scrums. And this grouping of 4 teams, and then you have a grouping of 3 teams because those 3 is all that's needed for that component. Then you have a grouping of 2 teams, and then they all roll up. All 4 of these groups roll up to a scrum of scrums, and then that scrum of scrums rolls up to the executive action team. And then over here you have team of 2, team of 2, team of 4, team of 2, because this whole group here builds another component of theirs, and then they roll it up to the executive action team. And so you can see, you can structure it many different ways. You can even have, you can see different structures here and they all roll up. And so again, within, they did their daily at 8 a.m., then they did their scrum of scrums at 8:15, scrum of scrums at 8:45, and at 9 o'clock, you'd have everybody reporting into the executive meta scrum with any issues across the teams. I'm going to talk about virtual teams in a minute here. Here's another example, 5 scrum of scrums with 19 teams. If you were to structure it this way. Here's another one. This one had some other virtual teams, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but this was 1,500 developers synced up. Right, this one had 6, so they broke that 5 kind of suggestion. They went with 6 here, 6 teams there, scrum of scrums, and then they report in here, and then they have another 3 teams here. So you kind of see the structure. It's team of teams, right? It's grouping of teams that all report up and roll up. This was a 3M, the health services at 3M. So it's kind of, nicely laid out here. It's clean. And you'll notice they have these gray ones were non-scrum teams. I think they were doing Kanban or doing some other things, but they were still teams. They just weren't doing Scrum. And then you have these whited out virtual teams here, which I'm going to explain now. So how do you handle specialty roles, specialty skills? So one of the ways to do it is, and let's say you have a group of, I'll do in purple here. Let's say over here you have a group of user experience people that focus on user experience, some patterns, patterns, library designs, the experience of a user. And maybe you only have 2. You only have 2 user experience people for the whole organization, right? You have all these teams that want to possibly use your user experience folks, but you don't have enough to go around. And so what you do is, a better practice would have them create a patterns library that teams could use. But even if it says, say these are DBAs or these are DevOps, or you just don't have enough of them to go around, you would form a virtual team, not virtual as in remote, virtual as in they don't actually work together with themselves. And how that works is you have a product owner that still determines their work. So we have a product backlog. We still have a product owner. This product owner is also attending one of the scrums, one of the meta scrums. So they're syncing up with other product owners. And how this process works is that product owners put a request in and they say, okay, this product owner down here at this team needs needs UX help. So they put a request in to the virtual team. And this product owner puts a request in to the virtual team. And this product owner puts a request in to the virtual team. There's a contract in place that this product owner agrees that they'll respond within 24 hours of where their request is in their product backlog. So every request becomes essentially a product backlog item. And then this product owner is syncing up with the chief product owner, whatever level they're at, and which of these teams are the most important. Like everybody needs UX, but we don't have enough to go around. So what's my priority? Working with a chief product owner. And then what we do is we deploy this user experience person gets deployed down to this team. When their request has been basically accepted or fulfilled, they're going to sit with this team down here now and do the work in that sprint with that team. Next sprint, or maybe even halfway through the sprint, they're going to move to the next team that's put a request in. And so they're sitting with this team. So it's a virtual team because these folks in the virtual team don't actually have a team they work together with. What they do is they're always inside another Scrum team, almost like a guest star or guest speaker. And they are doing the work in those Scrum teams. So that specialty role is constantly bouncing from team to team to team within that sprint and committing to that team that I am here to do that work you've asked us for in this sprint. And then next sprint, I move to the next team. Another sprint, I might go to another team until until we do that indefinitely, or we train more in that skill set, give more of that skill set across the organization, or if we're doing something like user experience, maybe we create a user experience patterns library. If we're doing something like DevOps, with Scrum at scale out, you can do this with Safe or Scrum at scale. Safe has this built-in, already has this built in, but you can have a specialty team or a specialty group. You could say, let's say of these 5 groupings, this group here, or even a single team in this group here, is responsible for infrastructure and DevOps for all the other teams in that group, right? You could say this group is responsible for DevOps. So it's almost a specialty team that helps all the other groupings in here. And you might have a specialty team here. This one's a little too big to do that. Let me go, this one sort of makes a little more sense here. Let me go to a smaller structure. So in this example here, it might be that this is our specialty team. And their job is to provide DevOps support and infrastructure support to all these other teams, right? They're a specialty team. So you could do something like that where you have a team that specializes in supporting the other teams. So that's one way to handle specialties is you create virtual teams and you deploy them as needed. Alternate thing that you could do, I've seen work with some organizations is they'll do, I'll do it in, I'll do orange here. You can have your specialty team here that's not doing Scrum, and you have your specialties. You maybe have your DevOps and you have your DBA and you have a infrastructure guy, and you just have these random skill sets that you don't necessarily have enough to go across the organization. And they're doing Kanban or Kanban or Kanban. And they have a list of, okay, these are the things they're going to be working on, but they're more reactive. So what they're doing is they're attending the Scrum of Scrum events here. Oh, wrong, drawing to the wrong one. They're attending the Scale Daily Scrum over here, and they're attending this to say and listening. And this team I report in, we're having some database help, database administration help. We don't know what to do. We're stuck. And so they report back and we make that a ticket in the Kanban, and they agree to, we'll start on this immediately and we hope to give you an answer by noon. So their agreement is we're going to listen in and we're going to try to solve all your problems by midday so you don't have an impediment. You keep going forward. So this team's more reactive and they're kind of listening in. Now, do they all have to attend? No, it could be a representative that goes and attends. Could be they all go and attend. All right. But the idea is that they're attending, the special team is attending, and then they're going back to work among themselves, any issues they have to resolve. Right. So that's another way you can handle specialty teams. And so that's what these are. All these are virtual teams down here, or you'll see in this example here, the doctors were, this is, I forgot what company this was, but the doctors were virtual teams. User experiences was a virtual team. Architecture was a virtual team. In this example here, at back, they had some virtual infrastructure teams. So they would deploy to different teams as needed, depending on the sprint or the request. Another way you can structure your Scrum of Scrums, this is just a little bit different, but this is if you're using external teams, maybe vendor teams, possibly. You have your, on the Scrum of Scrum side or the Scrum Master side, you have your main FTE employees or full-time employee teams. So team 1, 2, and 3, they're syncing up every day with a Scrum of Scrums, but team 1's got an external team they use, a vendor team possibly. And so you have a product owner that represents the work that's going to that team. Same here, you have a product owner that represents the work on that team. You have a product owner here that's representing these two teams going to the work, the work that's going to these two teams. And on the meta Scrum, you can kind of see that here. All these product owners get together to figure out which teams are getting what work delivered to them. So the product owners are working directly with these teams, but Scrum Master wise, this team's going to report into here any issues they have, and they're going to escalate it to the Scrum of Scrums. So you can structure it different ways depending on your needs, depending if you're working with vendor teams, possibly. There are ways to structure that. All right. Cross coordination as the teams do their daily Scrum. All right, we talked Scale Daily Scrum is just a rolled up version of Scrum, but you may use a program board or dependency board. This is something you might see in Safe, where you have all these dependencies and who's got what dependencies across multiple sprints. Simplified version that I like to use is just a dependency board. These teams need something, these teams are going to provide it. So Bravo needs create an API route from Team Alpha. All right, we can contract. This might be something we go over in that Scrum of Scrums or that daily Scrum. And that is the majority of the content. I got some other slides too that go into prioritization, release planning, and metrics. I kind of just show that real quick. So prioritization, all right, chief product owner or the executive meta Scrum, they focus on the ideas, the epics, and they prioritize that. That gets eventually down to the teams for initial estimation. And then the product owner is focused on the release planning for that. All right. So you kind of work from an epic level all the way down based on the different levels of where you're at within the meta scrum. On release planning, again, we might do, you have your timeline and every, you're gonna sync up every so often, similar to if you're doing safe like a PI planning. But the product owners and the scrum teams sync up on their release plan and figure out what they think the backlog is of this group of teams, right? And then they're gonna adjust their release plan based on that group of teams. If you're estimating, you can roll up all the points across all the teams and figure out what the total points are across multiple teams, and then you can get the average or the average velocity rolled up even across multiple teams. So you can start predicting when you'll have stuff delivered across your scaled environment. And that is it. Any questions? All right, so we have one question. So there's a Q&A button on Zoom. You can click that and then allow you to answer questions. You can't see each other's questions, I don't believe, but I'm gonna answer this. Look at this one. So what specialty roles can there be in safe? What specialty roles can there be in safe? It doesn't specifically recognize many, except the systems team engineer. So I'm not as familiar with safe as Rob Shaw is. He just did a webinar last month on the safe side. And so it's one of the things I like about Scrum at Scale. It's very fluid. Safe to me is just very prescriptive and hard set in stone. You can't change anything. So, but Safe does have a release engineer. The release engineer equivalent is that Scrum with Scrums Master. So that would be a specialty in the, let's see if I have, like if I go back to this one here, one of these I drew on. So that would be like here, the specialty team. This Scrum with Scrums Master might be the release engineer, being responsible for the DevOps or the release of all these other things going on, or just it could be just the release of these two teams. You could have that specialty role here as well, a Scrum with Scrums Master. So a lot of times in Scrum at Scale, the Scrum with Scrums Master could be a release engineer. With how Safe handles user experience or DBAs, not 100% sure. I would lean on Rob Shaw for that. I have to ask him. All right, any other questions? All right, one more poll then. Feel free to just ask questions out loud. Everyone's on mute. Everyone is allowed to, whoops, there we go. Everyone's allowed to talk now. Feel free to ask questions out loud or post them in the chat, but one more poll. Did you learn anything? So most of it was new, half of it was new. I knew most of this stuff already. I didn't learn anything new. I could have presented this webinar, which is perfectly fine. And again, this is all based on Scrum at Scale. It's complete. It's a 2-day class in itself. So I've given you like the super high level fast version of Scrum at Scale. But if you're interested in it, look it up, Scrum at Scale from scruminc.com. That's Jeff Sutherland's company, the creator of Scrum. Take a look at that. All right. Well, there are no additional questions. Unless anybody's got one.
Nope. Cool. Thanks, Fred.
We will end early. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
See you in a couple hours.
All right, bye.
Bye.